Alright guys, welcome back to the video. So in this one we're going to be making a small dining room cabinet. Now I think it's important to preface the fact that this is quite a small cabinet overall, and that is exactly what I was looking for in this project. There's this very narrow wall in the dining room in my parents' house that I wanted to fill with this cabinet. I very specifically wanted this thing to just fill the space, and we are going to be adding something above this in the future, but for now I just wanted to do this one cabinet, again, to just maximize the space and just make it look a little bit better in this dining room. So for this project, we're going to be using primarily American black cherry. Now, cherry has become my all-time favorite wood. As you look around the background of my shop, the majority of the wood that you're gonna see is American cherry. You'll see it all along the back wall there, and in front of my workbench, I have about a couple hundred board feet of 8-quarter cherry just stacked up there. And I've found that cherry is just the easiest, most reliable wood to work with. It is always gonna give you a good result. But then, of course, you guys know me and my love for walnut. So what we're working with here is what's called medieval walnut. Now, I've never heard of this stuff before. I have no more information about it other than the fact that it is nicknamed medieval walnut. I don't think it's really anything different than normal walnut. The only real difference compared to the walnut I've bought from other sources is that this medieval walnut has a lot of mineral deposits in it, which is, it can be for the better or for the worse, but in my opinion, this is some of the nicest walnut I have ever seen. And to add to that, this was some of the cheapest walnut I've ever paid for, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. Now again, you do have to work around those mineral deposits on this walnut, but as you guys will see for the panels of this project, I got some just beautifully clear, almost quarter sawn pieces that are honestly breathtaking. But again, going back to the features of this cabinet, we're combining that cherry and that medieval walnut so that we have just a little bit of subtle contrast. I know in a lot of furniture design, people like to combine maple and walnut for a bit higher contrast, but again, for me personally, I really like the contrast between cherry and walnut. And what's really nice is that as the cherry ages and gets to that really dark, rich, dark red color, it just ends up blending even better, so that the walnut and the cherry almost become very similar in darkness and color tone, except the cherry will always keep that slightly reddish tone, and the walnut will keep that little bit more of a chocolate brown tone. So this is by far the best combination. And you guys are going to see a lot of projects coming out with these two specific blends of woods because the American cherry is very affordable. I have a really good supplier for it here in Calgary. And then that medieval walnut, there's a place called Windsor Plywood. I think they're a very Canadian brand, but they have a few locations here in Calgary, and they seem to stock this stuff fairly regularly. So I'm going to be buying a lot more of that medieval walnut. Moving on to the structural joinery of this project. This is one where people are not going to like the way that I do this project. My goal with this project was very much so to see just how much I can use my domino joiner. And I know people don't like the domino joiner. I understand it. It kind of takes away from the traditional joinery that I used to do a lot more of. But the benefit of it is it's very quick. And that is one of the things where at this point in my life where I'm very busy with my job and just trying to find any time I can in the shop, along with making these videos and that, anything I can do to save myself some time, I try to do it. And the domino joiner, I like it for that. Now, I will say that I am starting to, the more I use the domino joiner, the more it makes me want to do more traditional joinery. And that was, honestly, that was very much so my goal with it, is when I can speed up things like basic mortise and tenon joinery so that doesn't take up days of work anymore. Then I can spend more time, hand cutting some dovetails from my drawers, or if I want to do like 10 sets of mortise and tenons on a piece of furniture, but then I want to have 2 beautifully hand cut through mortise and tenons on like the bottom of post legs, stuff like that. Those are the opportunities that the domino joiner is going to present me. Again, just with that little bit of time savings. But again, it's all about kind of just doing whatever I want with these projects. And I was really excited and kind of impressed at how versatile the domino joiner proved to be in this project. Now, a lot of it comes down, for my own pace, of learning how to use the tool properly. For example, here you can see that I have those Morrises cut into those bottom thicker pieces, and I cut them too early. I shouldn't have cut those at this point just because it made the glue up of these side panels a little bit more complicated. It's better to do it the way that you're going to see me do it in a little while here, and actually create all of these sub-assemblies and then attach those sub-assemblies to the main structure, to the post legs. And so as we're doing these raised panels, I want you guys to just kind of look at this medieval walnut and just appreciate how amazingly beautiful this stuff is. Again, the cheapest walnut I've ever bought is just absolutely beautiful. So as we finish up these panels here, you guys are going to see a little bit of a different finishing process here for me. So we're starting off with a little bit of burnishing with some 4-0 steel wool, and then we're going to go through and apply an initial layer of tried and true oil. Now, the reason we're doing the pre-finishing on these panels is because it's going to save us a little bit of time and effort later on. Once you have the sides of this cabinet fully assembled, it's really difficult to get in and actually get oil into all of the areas, so you're better off doing a little bit of pre-finishing, plus we get a sneak peek. Now, in addition to my normal finishing, which is usually just a natural oil, I'm also using this paste wax, which comes from a French company and is probably the best paste wax I've ever used. I bought a couple tinted variants that we're going to be trying on future projects, but for now we're just using a walnut tinted one, which has a little bit of a darker brown undertone. And I think it just made these panels look beautiful. So with all of our pieces made, we can now start working on our sub-assemblies. So what we're gluing up right now is the back frame of this cabinet, and then from here we can move on to gluing up our side frames. So everything gets a pre-sanding, and then what I'm doing here is, because my floating panels were just a little bit loose, I packed a little bit of hand plane shavings into those grooves, and that just acts like a spring to help keep those panels nice and tight in there. With a little bit of clamping force, those panels are never going to move around, and everything is just beautifully wedged in place. And so you can see here, after that glue up, these panels are just beautiful. They're ready to go into the next stage of this with a little bit of cleanup from the hand planes. Now, one of the things I did try to do on this project was doing some more hand beveling. I really could have done this with a router or a hand plane, but I figured it'd be kind of fun to go back in with a chisel and just try my best at it. Not to mention, I also want to test out some of my new audio hardware, and that sounded so good. Some of my favorite things about my new camera setup is just the amazing sounds I can collect while in the shop. Being able to have some of my microphones nice and close to the working area just creates these just beautiful, rich sounds. So I hope you guys appreciate it as much as I do. I know with me talking over it and the music in the background, the way I make my videos doesn't really do the audio quality justice. So if you guys are ever interested, I do actually have a dedicated channel where there's no music, no talking. It's just the awesome shop sounds. And I have to say that channel, those videos are actually way better now that I have dedicated audio equipment. But back to the project here, you can see that I've recut the dominoes on these side panels, and I actually went up to a 10mm domino from the 6mm dominoes we were using on the rest of it. Now I did this because mainly on those tops and bottoms, I wanted to be able to recut those dominoes, and you can see how we basically have two different size mortises on those end pieces. And so those bigger dominoes are just gonna allow us to, they don't really create any difference. They just allowed me to recut that hole in the same spot and reuse basically the same material. But we only needed 4 of them going through there, and that is going to create a solid and very rigid structure. And this is one of the things that I do like about the domino joiner, is the fact that I can just throw mortise and tenon joinery anywhere I want in a project. Typically a frame like this, only that top and bottom piece would actually be attached to those legs, but now by having those verticals attached as well, this thing is just going to be a little bit stronger. Again, it's not going to change, you know, the house falling on it or anything, but it is going to be a slightly stronger connection, and that is one of the benefits of dominoes. Also, doing stuff like this where I can build this solid frame, I can pass it through my planer and get everything on the back side of this piece at the exact same level. Now this really isn't a necessary step, it's just one of the things that I wanted to try doing because I had that opportunity. Because normally when those vertical pieces are just kind of floating in there, they will bounce around too much to be passed through the planer or the drum sander. So in this case, because I had those dominoes in there and everything was just this solid panel, I wanted to see if it would work going through the planer, and it actually did. It made it so that both sides, both of the inside faces of these leg setups were just solid, and they were perfectly flat all the way through, and it kind of made the rest of the project a little bit easier. And you can kind of see here the benefit of those dominoes is all of the joinery is just a hole in the wood plus a little piece of basically dowel material that you're putting into that hole. So the joinery overall is super easy, and it makes the glue up super easy as well. There's no joinery that you really need to worry about. You know, I don't know, there's nothing that really needs to be fit up. Basically, this just becomes a slapped together piece of furniture, which makes it sound bad, but it can be a big benefit. So I don't want this to be an ad for the domino joiner, not by far. I understand that they are very expensive tools, and for a lot of people, they're just not worth it. But I want people to understand why I went out and bought one, is just purely for that fact that it is saving me a ton of time in the shop. So as we work on the doors here, I want to point out that this is one of the first furniture projects I've done using my new camera setup. And that includes all the different audio tools and that I've bought. And I have to say, it makes this process so very fun and exciting for me. Those of you that don't know, I've always had a fascination with photo, video, all this kind of stuff. Obviously, I like making videos. So, wow, it's almost a year ago now when I upgraded and built this new camera. I was just super excited to put it to use. And so one of the things I did find was kind of a limitation with this project is the fact that even though this is a very small project, trying to be able to get it all in frame on my camera the way I have it set up right now with the lens that I bought for it is kind of challenging. The lens that I bought, it's a fairly zoomed in 35 to 100 mil micro four thirds lens, so it's very tight up on whatever it is I'm shooting. So it gives me these beautiful close-up shots like this one here, and they look spectacular. But the downside is that I don't really get to show as much of either myself or really the project as a whole in the shop. So what you guys are going to see for a little while is a lot more very zoomed in footage, which honestly looks really sick. It's just a fact of I wish I could show a bit wider views, but in time I'll be able to get some more lenses for this camera to let me show a little bit more. But for now, you guys will just have to deal with these like beautiful close-up shots of this woodworking. Also, I want to mention, in case you guys haven't kind of noticed, but the audio here too has been stepped up big time. you guys might notice that I have that little leather band on my wrist, and that's where I actually wear a microphone. So that picks up all this really close, really nice audio. And then I also have a really high-end microphone that's actually on my camera that picks up the audio from a little bit further away. And when you combine the audio from both sources, you actually kind of get this 3D effect, which I find just so cool. Again, for those of you guys that are really into video and audio and all this kind of stuff, you might be more interested in this than others, but I found that it was just a super fun and exciting process. And again, this camera cost me basically everything I've ever made from this YouTube channel I put into this camera, and it was worth it. I've been going back and forth on whether or not I should have done that, and I have to say, more than anything, I'm just super happy to be using this camera, to be making videos that just look this good, because it's just kind of a dream of mine come true. And I hope you guys like it too. If you guys don't notice a difference, then that's okay. But yeah, for those of you that, so I know that there's going to be a few people that just notice an instant difference between this video and a lot of my past videos, and that's all thanks to most of you guys watching me for years, and that little bit of ad revenue that I've been able to save up over the years has, again, it's all gone back into just trying to improve how these videos look, and that's a really just an exciting thing in my opinion. So earlier in the video, I mentioned that I have a ton of 8/4 cherry in my shop. Basically, when I buy lumber now, I just place an order for 8/4 cherry, and I go and pick up a big chunk of it. Even in that medieval walnut, I buy all that in 8/4 because that's just what it comes in. But I like 8/4 stock because it is, in my opinion, the most useful. And so what we're doing here is we're just taking a chunk of 8/4 cherry. We're going to book match it, and that's going to become our floating shelves, our tabletop. Basically, all the parts of this project are just going to come out of a book matched pair of these pieces of 8/4 stock. And again, this is why I like buying 8/4 stock so much, is because I find that if I cut it on the side and I take off like 1 3/4 inch strips, I can get a bunch of really beautiful quarter sawn material for all of the frame pieces on a piece of furniture. Or I can cut it flat and I can get a bunch of really good drawer material depending on the width of the piece. Or I can book match it like this, and I can also get some really good shelf panels or tabletops, whatever I'm looking for. So it's just a little bit more of a versatile option. Now, I know that a lot of people don't have that option, unless you have a reasonably good bandsaw, or you have even the space or the ability to pick up lumber like that. It can be a little bit more challenging, but I highly recommend, if you have the option to, definitely look into just kind of stocking up on some 8/4 material, because it's kind of the best all-around material to just have in your shop at the ready. And for these floating shelves, we are going to be doing breadboard ends, but we're going to be doing them a little bit cheaty, again, with the domino joiner, surprise, surprise. Now, there's a lot of controversy about this technique of using the domino joiner, whether or not it really is a breadboard end or it's just a mortise and tenon. Regardless of how you look at it, this is still a breadboard end. It has all the same effects as a breadboard end. It does everything the exact same. And so what we're doing is basically we're cutting mortises into our panel, which we're then going to glue our pieces into. And then on our end pieces, we're doing a fitted mortise in the middle, and then 2 of the mortises on the outside are gonna be using the domino setting where it kind of elongates the hole. We're still gonna be pinning these with through dowels, and this is basically a traditional breadboard end, just using a little bit of a faster method. Now, honestly, the biggest thing that I don't like about this is it's boring. It's not, breadboard ends are one of the most satisfying joints to cut. and they really aren't that hard, and it would be a good reason to kind of crack out the mortiser in the future. Now, I've been saying it a lot, the domino joiner was the kind of the goal behind this project, was seeing how much I could use and abuse and kind of where the limit is for the domino joiner. And this right here is where I draw the line with the acceptable uses of a domino joiner. I've seen it a lot on YouTube, using it for drawer boxes, and what I found in doing this is that, well, it does work. It is not a good option for it. So there's a lot of areas where, again, the domino joiner works great. Breadboard ends, the structural joints of a piece of furniture. But in this case, the way that I put together this drawer is something that I'm not very happy with. Now, technically everything should be fine. I don't think there's really any strength lost by using those dominoes in there. The primary issue I have with this is just how thick the material has to be in order to support those dominoes. And you could go a little bit thinner if you use like 4mm dominoes. You could use slightly thinner material, but you also have to take into account that those dominoes that are on the ends are not that strong, and there's a very good chance that they could break through that end grain. So overall, you have to over engineer your drawers just a little bit too much. And so, like I said, this is honestly where I draw the line with the domino joiner. And it was really interesting to figure that out, because up until this point, I was like, oh, I can just use the domino joiner for everything. It's great. And then I got to the drawer, and it's like, okay, well, maybe hand tools are just the better option here. And finally, with the tabletop, this is where things just got weird. I had an idea for how I could really cheat with the whole domino joiner breadboard end thing, and I just decided to go for it. So what we're doing here is basically a double drawboard mortise and tenon. So we're going to be putting in these dominoes. We're going to be drilling a hole onto one side that we're then going to pin to this board. We're then also going to drill a hole on the other side, and I'll be completely honest, this was mostly I wanted to do this just so I could speed it up, because I wanted to be able to glue this tabletop up in one day without having to do separate glue ups for the dominoes going into the tabletop. I just wanted to get it done. And so in a way I was just kind of rushing, but it also looks really cool to me. The way that the tabletop looks with those double dowels on the top side, it just kind of looks unique, and it obviously it's part of the joinery, and it kind of shows some secrets or some hints as to how the tabletop was put together, which is one of my favorite parts about joinery, is when you can kind of show those secrets. And like I said earlier, we ended up not being able to use that paste wax just because of how many complex corners and that there are on this project. I just didn't think it would look very well trying to buff it out, so we're just going with a normal tried and true varnish oil finish. But that is going to do it for this project, guys. As always, I do hope you enjoyed it. This was a very nice project for me to work on. I really enjoyed kind of the overall simplicity of it. And now I have a very functional piece of furniture that fills a very specific spot, which you guys will get to see in the next few minutes here. But as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.